America. This is America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. And we have a number of issues to discuss in our world. Apparently, we are constantly in a series of crises. President Obama has come out and slammed Republicans for gun reform stunts. Really now? Well, I beg to differ, Mr. President, but I was not aware that the Second Amendment was a stunt. I mean, I understand the Second Amendment to be a right of self-defense for our lives, our owned property, and our state and our nation against all evildoers, domestic and foreign, and to prevent tyranny and slavery by government. I never quite understood that to be a stunt. However, apparently you believe that it is. That's pretty shameful. I don't believe that the individuals who are supporting our Second Amendment, which is a constitutional statement, are stooping to political stunts to block gun reform. In fact, I would turn this table around on you and say that you are using political stunts to limit and cut our throats. To limit our Second Amendment rights and to cut our throats. Figuratively, and perhaps literally. You've been parading around at taxpayer expense, flying around on fancy jets, going from town to town, city to city, state to state, exploiting Sandy Hook and the 20 children and 6 adults who were gunned down there by a homicidal maniac who obtained guns illegally by stealing them and murdering the owner. And yet, you claim that their defense of the Second Amendment to the Constitution is a stunt? Your quote, some folks in Washington are already floating the idea that they may use political stunts to prevent votes on any of these reforms. A filibuster is not a stunt. You and your party have used them many, many times. They're not just saying they'll vote no on ideas that almost all Americans support. Translation, Delphi Technique. They're saying they'll do everything they can to even prevent any votes on these provisions. Well, yes, they should. What's most important to you, says the president, our children or an A grade from the gun lobby? How about an A grade from the American people? The hell with the gun lobby. How about an A grade from the American people for standing up and doing the constitutional right thing? How about an A grade for constitutionality? How about following the rules that our nation is founded and built upon? Let me explain to you the Delphi technique of mind control, because it's really important that you understand how you're being manipulated by this president, this administration, and almost everyone in any form of power that you come into contact with. The way it operates is really simple. The facilitator, in this case Obama, will tell you that everyone else is in support of this issue, and you're the odd man out. And then they will belittle you and insult you in an effort to try to change your opinion, to go with the flow, to ride with the herd, to go with the crowd. And if you're still unwilling and you balk, then you'll either be ejected from the room or You'll be so minimalized in the eyes of the other people in the room that you will have lost all credibility. The Delphi technique is a mind control technique that's been in play and been used since the early 50s. This administration and the Democratic Party and the progressives in general, including almost all liberal factions, have become experts at it. Mark my words and make no mistake. Do your homework and do your research. The Delphi technique is in full implementation in the United States of America. And every politician on both sides of the fence that you hear will give it to you. The purpose of it is very simple. You go out there and you build a consensus, which doesn't really even exist. It's a false consensus. Go look this up. Please don't take my word for this. Please don't expect that I'm going to be able to give you everything that you need to know about the Delphi technique and make it significant enough for you to grasp the full implication of everything that's being done to you. Please go do your homework. Please do your due diligence. Please do the research yourself. Look it up, understand it, and then recognize it when it's being used on you. Because it's being used on you every single day. The facilitator, who is, by the way, well trained in the concept of the Delphi technique, will basically go out and tell you that everyone else in the room has chosen these issues to be the priority, or these are the issues we're going to discuss, or these are the only issues that we're going to discuss related to this problem. And that's by consensus from the group. And it reads like a multi-choice question. They give you a clear and specific list of things to choose from, none of which are basically quite where you need it to be. So to use the example that we used the other day, when you have children that are being indoctrinated in our schools, I read you those questions that are in our children's textbooks. Now, those questions are essentially the Delphi technique in use, in play every day. Here's the question. What is a major advantage of socialism? Here's how your children, this is the perfect example because this is how your children are being indoctrinated. What is the major advantage of, let me start again. What is a major advantage of socialism? And the answers are A, it is more efficient than capitalism. No, it's not. B, more people share in the benefits of society. That's not true either. C, it results in low production costs. No, it doesn't. It results in hidden production costs. And D, it is free from economic instability. Please select the best answer from the choices. Now, here's the problem. You've been given a limited number of choices, none of which actually either accurately portray the answer to the question, and quite frankly, they left off the obvious, E, none of the above. Or E, socialism is a failed political endeavor and a failed economic model. They don't talk about that. When we come back from this break, I'm going to explain to you exactly how this kind of example of a Delphi technique is being used on your children. But make no mistake, it's also being used on you. You just don't recognize it when you see it. And that's why I want you to understand exactly how it's being deployed, so that you will recognize it and it will no longer affect you. But you have to know it when you see it. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And you can find this and every other show that we do on YouTube at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for a new or used pistol, shotgun, or rifle, West Plains Pawn and Gun has over 450 firearms in stock. All your favorite models like Beretta, Glock, Smith & Wesson, Kimber, and many, many more. West Plains Pawn and Gun is also a Class 3 arms dealer, so if they don't have it on the shelf, West Plains Pawn and Gun can order it for you. Even those hard-to-get guns. West Plains Pawn and Gun, 1713 U.S. Highway 160 West in West Plains, or online at westplainspawn.com.
Pacific Beach Tanning and Fitness is ready to help you look and feel your best in 2013. Start with UV therapy. There's nothing like a deep warmth of a tanning bed to ease muscle and joint pain and eliminate the winter blues. Next, step into our fully equipped gym and get in a great workout. Finally, reward yourself with a session on the PowerWave massage bed. Do something great for yourself and take a trip to the beach. Pacific Beach Tanning and Fitness, 110 West Trish Knight Street, downtown West Plains.
All right. You know, you don't have to take my word for this, and I really don't want you to. I just want to introduce to you the idea of how you're being manipulated, and then I expect you, I need you to go out there and find out exactly how and where and under what circumstances for your own benefit. You can find that on Wikipedia. Type in Delphi Technique or Delphi Method into any browser. And I don't care if you don't have internet access. Today, I expect that you're going to write this word down, and you're going to go either to a library or a friend or someplace where you can do an hour or two's worth of research and reading. Here's what Wikipedia says about it. The Delphi Method is a structured communication technique originally developed as a systematic, interactive forecasting method which relies on a panel of experts. The experts answer questionnaires in 2 or more rounds. After each round, a facilitator provides an anonymous summary of the experts' forecast from the previous round, as well as the reasons they provided for their judgments. Thus, experts are encouraged to revise their earlier answers in light of the replies of other members of their panel. It is believed that during the process, the range of the answers will decrease and the group will converge toward the correct, in quotes, answer. Consensus. Finally, the process is stopped after a predefined stop criteria, either a number of rounds or the achievement of consensus or the stability of the results. That is the mild version. That's the basic outline of how it works. And so here's what happens. People are polled for their response to certain questions. And every time you hear, well, the polls state this, the polls state that, the polls classify this, the polls confirm, what's happening is that the Delphi method is being used against you. Because the concept is that polls are taken and a set specific, and we all know that polls can be, I mean, your answer to a poll can be very clearly and easily manipulated based on how the question is written. We all know that. I mean, you can have a third grade education and grasp that idea. So the questions are loaded, the answers come in, and then the poller shuffles them around in whatever order or based on whatever bias they may have, and then they tell you what those answers are. And it's always anonymous. So you get 20, 30, 50 people in a room, and you go through and ask a certain group of loaded questions. You get back a group of answers that have limited ability to expand outside. In other words, everything has to be either a yes or a no or a checkbox. There's no opportunity for the respondent to essay and expound upon what their answer is and why. And it has to be one of the given choices. i.e., this perfect example that I just gave you of this question from the schools. What is a major advantage of socialism? A, it is more efficient than capitalism. B, more people share in the benefits of society. C, it results in low production costs. And D, it is free from economic instability. Now, anyone who has done any kind of homework on socialism knows that none of those answers are correct. And yet you're not given an opportunity or a choice to respond back and check a box that says E, I want to put my own answer in here. Because it gives you the very clear and explicit instruction below that says, please select the best answer from the choices. Well, there is no best answer from the choices. But your child, who doesn't want to make waves and doesn't want to balk back against a teacher and doesn't want to be accused of being an outsider, says, okay, I guess I just have to pick the lesser of the four evils. The Delphi Technique is all about the lesser of the evils, whether it's 1 or 50. It's always the lesser of the evils. And then those answers are reviewed, and the teacher comes back and says, well, the answer from the general consensus of the class is A, it is more efficient than capitalism. Now, there might be 25 kids in that class who chose B, 14 who chose C, 9 who chose D, and the rest chose A. But the goal of the teacher is to reinforce the fact that A, it is more efficient than capitalism. That's the teaching moment that he or she wants. And so what they say is, well, the class has told us, via the majority of the answers, that A, it is more efficient than capitalism. And so now they've just set the hook in your mind that socialism's major advantage is that it is more efficient than capitalism. They offer no explanation. They offer no summarization. They offer no readily or credible answer as to why or how that is. That would require critical thinking. We don't dare want to teach that to our children. So what happens is, instead of critical thinking skills, we're taught that consensus is the means and the method by which things are accomplished, which is an absolute fallacy. Consensus is democracy, a.k.a. mob rule, a.k.a. groupthink, a.k.a. he who has the might has the right. So now the class is told, well, the answer from the vast majority of the students is that A, it is more efficient than capitalism. And the general consensus of the class is A is the correct answer. So Bobby raises his hand and says, well, wait a second, teacher. I didn't choose A. I chose C. It results in lower production costs. And the teacher turns around and says, well, why would you think that, Bobby? I mean, the simple truth is that it doesn't offer lower production costs. You're just being an outsider, and you're trying to disrupt the entire class. Now, we've all seen you do this before. And so the teacher insults Bobby and belittles him in front of the group and attempts to drive Bobby back into the hole from which he climbed. And the primary purpose of that is to take out those individuals who are separate from the group in their thinking and are vocal. Now, the Delphi Technique teaches that if you are an individual who pushes the boundaries of what the teacher calls consensus or groupthink, that you should be belittled and driven out of the group, either until you leave or until you acquiesce and join the group and just shut your mouth. Now, what we don't know is that the vast majority of the children who answered that question did not actually choose A, but the given answer that the teacher wanted is A. And so he or she says, well, it is more efficient than capitalism because everyone shares and blah, 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 blah. The students walk away with the concept that, yes, the major advantage of socialism is that it is more efficient than capitalism. It steamrolled the entire continent of Europe. It steamrolled the entire continent of Asia. It has steamrolled most of South America. The simple truth is, it's all a lie. None of those answers are the right answer. There are no major advantages of socialism over capitalism. If you allow laissez-faire free market capitalism, it is far more efficient than socialism. More people actually do share in the benefits of society under capitalism and free market capitalism, free enterprise. Because a rising tide does float all boats, not just some. As long as government keeps their hands out of it. As soon as government creates a monopolistic situation and allows one provider, one vendor, one manufacturer to have a leg up over the rest because they bar and prohibit competition, then you have lost the principles of free market capitalism and you have lost the principles of free market enterprise. And what you descend into is a mixed concept of free market socialism. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what China has, that is what Europe has, that is what Asia has, that is what Russia has, that is what South America has. And look at the results. That is what we have. And look at the results. It does not result in lower production costs, it raises production costs. But the simple truth is, since government manages the books, you'll never know it. And it is far from free from economic instability because it's only stable until the other people's money runs out. Once their money is exhausted, the instability moves in. But this technique is used to indoctrinate and mentally manipulate your children. Now, Obama is using the same technique when he says, some folks in Washington are already floating the idea that they may use political stunts to prevent votes on these gun reforms. How did he just use that? Well, I'm going to tell you what he did. He pointed the guy out in the room who says, wait a minute, teacher, that's not right. And he belittles them in public in an effort to manipulate them into either going away, climbing back into their hole, or shutting their mouth and acquiescing out of embarrassment. They're not just saying they'll vote no on ideas that almost all Americans support. There's his consensus argument. So what he's saying is all Americans support these gun rights limitations. He's just used the Delphi Technique. He just used it. They're not saying they'll vote no on ideas that almost all Americans support. Where do you get the concept that most Americans support it? Most Americans don't support it, Mr. President. And the simple truth is, the proof is in the pudding. If most Americans supported your gun control agenda, we wouldn't be having this debate. And you wouldn't be out there lying on camera to America to try to convince them that everybody else other than them actually does support it. That's the reality of it, sir. What you're doing is demagoguing and demonizing the one lone voice in the wilderness who says, excuse me, sir, you're not actually correct on that point. Well, of course I'm correct on that point, Bobby. What don't you understand about this? Everyone else in the class says that it's a good idea. Why are you the lone man out? Now, there might be 6 or 7 other kids sitting out there in the audience, but none of them are willing to say, excuse me, Mr. President, I agree with Bobby. Because they don't want to be belittled, they don't want to be demonized, they don't want to be pointed out in the crowd. You know why? Because human nature is instinctively willing to keep its mouth shut rather than be belittled and embarrassed or be targeted. How quiet are you being because you don't want to be targeted? Well, I don't want them thinking about me. I don't want the IRS coming after me because they got me pointed out as a problem child. I don't want them tapping my phones. I don't want them looking at my banking records. I'm afraid that they're going to come after me. Let me tell you something. That's the exact point. When that's what you fear, you've answered the question. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Some families who lost loved ones in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting are in the Capitol to lobby for tighter gun laws. This the morning after the president made his second visit to their state since the massacre.
This is not about politics. This is about doing the right thing for all the families who are here that have been torn apart by gun violence.
But not all victims' families agree with new legislation.
Mark Mattioli lost his 6-year-old son James at Sandy Hook.
Gun control works for people who abide by the laws. Criminals who conduct most of the gun crime don't care about the law.
Mattioli says he wishes more of the focus was on addressing mental health issues.
Fox Radio's Mike Makowitz. In eastern Afghanistan, 2 international service members are killed when a NATO chopper crashes. And Secretary of State John Kerry saying he had very constructive talks with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. Fox News, we report, you decide.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Wits End Classic Barbershop, who is the sponsor of our telephone lines this morning. They're located on the square in West Plains. It's Wits End Classic Barbershop. Thanks to our friends over at West Plains Pawn and Gun. You can find them on the web at westplainspawn.com. They can be reached at 417-256-3000, and they're located on Route 160, about a mile past Walmart on the right-hand side. 400 guns undercover. Pizza Hut, our friends down there on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They have an outstanding lunch menu with salad, pizza, and pasta. Excellent opportunity for you to have a great lunch and eat well and something tasty. Our friends over at the Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. Telephone 417-257-7799. Our friends over at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance can be found on the web at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com. My friend Brian there can be reached at 870-492-4030. They're located a half mile east of Walmart at 3225 Route 62, Mountain Home. My friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, the best damn bakery in 100 miles. She's right off the square in West Plains at 2 Evans Arcade, and you can reach her at 255-2253. And my friend Bill Stone over at Stone Construction. If you're considering doing remodeling, custom or new construction, or anything like commercial, give Bill a call and have him bid on your project at 293-0116.
There is this product on Amazon that is simply going crazy. The banana slicer, almost 2,500 consumer reviews. I've been trying to come up with an ideal way to slice a banana. Use a knife, they say. Well, my parole officer won't let me around knives. Or how about this one? What can I say about the banana slicer that hasn't already been said about the wheel or penicillin? Obviously, just a pure hoax.
Saturdays noon to 3 and weekdays at 7:35 for your Digital Minute. It's Kim Commando on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
Weather sponsorships are now available on News Talk 107.1 The Point. Get more information. Email info@diamondmediaradio.com for complete details.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, mostly cloudy skies, mostly cloudy so today, slight chance for thunderstorm, the high 76. Thunderstorms are likely tonight into the day tomorrow. Some of these storms could be heavy and potentially severe. Low tonight will be 66, high tomorrow 70. Rather cloudy for tomorrow night with thunderstorms, low 42, partly sunny Thursday. I'm Jim Rinaldi. For more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
Howell County Bank branch of Bank of Thayer, locally owned and operated since 1900. It's not what they do, it's how they do it. What does that mean? Roger London, president of Howell County Bank.
You know, when people come through the front door at our bank, they're going to be greeted by 2 or 3 people immediately before they hardly get in the door. And they're going to find a very, very warm environment and people that are enthusiastic about serving them.
At Howell County Bank, it truly is not what they do, but how they do it. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
The job of the facilitator, the job of the guy or girl who's running the program is to constantly belittle the outsider, the loudmouth. Right? And so here's how he does it. What's more important to you, our children or an A grade from the gun lobby? Well, first of all, those are not the two choices. Our children or an A grade from the gun lobby. He's ignoring the elephant in the room that the Second Amendment is a constitutional right and a right given to you by God and by nature. So it's not a question of children or an A grade from the gun lobby. That's like saying that the difference in life is whether you live as a king or you live on a desert island. There's a lot of space in between there, folks. But he doesn't want you to think that way. He's been delivering constant emotional calls for action, always surrounded by gun violence victims and cops. Why? Because he's trying to build the consensus, using the Delphi technique, that anyone who disagrees with him is an outsider, a loudmouth, disingenuous, a faker, biased, motivated by their own personal greed, whatever. Here's how he backs it up. Nicole Hockley, the mother of one of the children who was killed at Sandy Hook, has become a pretty vocal campaigner, right, for gun control. If Nicole can summon the courage to do that, how can the rest of us do any less? See, there's the goal. Nicole has done this. He holds her up as the shining example, the paragon of virtue, and then he looks at you and says, how can you do anything less? Well, those aren't the choices either, Mr. President. Again, there's something between king and desert island. He keeps using the same diatribe over and over and over. I got to tell you, if we don't respond to this, that'll be a tough day for me too, because we've got to expect more from ourselves and we've got to expect more from Congress. We've got to believe that, well, every once in a while we set politics aside and we just do what's right. Listen to the emotional pull, the constant refrain of how we can get around the Constitution. And he's saying it in kind of soft tyranny. We've got to believe that every once in a while we set politics aside and we just do what's right. What he's saying there is we're not setting politics aside, we're setting the Constitution aside. Now let me rephrase that and give you it with the right words in there. We've got to believe that every once in a while we set the Constitution aside and we meet my agenda, and that's what's right. The sentence still works. You see, the idea of what he's doing is very simple. There's a great website out there, by the way. In fact, I'm going to put up a link on this. It's called CNET, SEANET.com. They have an outstanding explanation of how to achieve a workable consensus within a structured time limit. And they talk about how it's been developed so that teachers can use it on your children. And guess what they call it? The Alinsky method. Yes, as in Saul Alinsky, as in the radical who wrote and sponsored Obama, and the techniques that Obama uses. Now you understand why he's using this. A setting or a group is immaterial, The setting or group is, however, immaterial. The point is that people in groups tend to share a certain knowledge base and display certain identifiable characteristics known as group dynamics. This allows for a special application of the basic technique. The change agent, or the facilitator, goes through the motions of acting as an organizer, getting each person in the target group to elicit an expression of their concern about a program, a project, or a policy in question. The facilitator listens intently and attentively, forms task forces and task groups, urges everyone to make lists, and so on. While he or she is doing this, the facilitator learns something about each member of the target group. He or she identifies the leaders, the loudmouths, as well as those who frequently change sides during the argument as the weak or the noncommittal. Suddenly, the amiable and friendly facilitator becomes the devil's advocate. He or she dons their professional agitator hat. Using the divide and conquer technique, he or she manipulates one group opinion against the other. This is accomplished by manipulating those who are out of step to appear ridiculous, unknowledgeable, inarticulate, or dogmatic. He or she wants certain members of the group to become angry, thereby forcing tensions to accelerate. Is any of this making sense to you? Do you not recognize exactly what this president is doing? The facilitator is well trained in psychological manipulation. He or she is able to predict the reactions of each group member. Individuals in opposition to the policy or program will be shut out of the group. The method works. It is effective with parents, teachers, school children, and any community group. The target rarely, if ever, knows that they are being manipulated. If they do suspect this is happening, they do not know how to end the process. The desired result is for group polarization and for the facilitator to become accepted as a member of the group and group process. He or she will then throw the desired idea on the table and ask for opinions during a discussion. Very soon, his or her associates from the divided group begin to adopt the idea as if it was their own and pressure the entire group to now accept the new proposition. The technique is a very unethical method of achieving consensus on a controversial topic in group settings because it requires well-trained professionals who deliberately escalate tension among group members, putting one faction against the other so as to make one viewpoint appear ridiculous so the other viewpoint becomes sensible, whether such is warranted or not. Sensible gun control. Common sense gun control. Common sense consensus. America believes that we should have gun limitations. How can you stand against that when it's our children's future? I mean, folks, this is so blatant, so obvious that quite frankly, this president should be arrested and charged with crimes against humanity for using mental manipulation on the American public. This study goes on to explain how you can disrupt the Delphi technique. And I'm telling you, I'm going to put up the post on our website. And I'm going to put it up as a story. I want you to read it. I want you to understand it. I want you to begin practicing disruption of this Delphi technique. Everywhere that you go, anywhere that you go in a public environment, in a public setting where someone, a senator, a legislator, a House representative member, begins to try to use this, a member of the media, you must break this chain. And there are some very explicit instructions on how to do that. I also need you to do this at your school board meetings. I also need you to do this in your own children's classrooms. Call your school and ask, why can I not sit in on one of my children's classes? And they'll probably say to you, well, you can if you'd like. You can sit in the back as long as you're quiet and don't interrupt. Good. Do that. Sit in on a government class. Sit in on a civics class. Sit in on a social studies class. Sit in on your child's American government class. I guarantee you that teacher will mind their P's and Q's. Form a community group that will then go in and take turns every day sitting in that class and mold that teacher's teaching style. Bend it to your will, not his or her will. And when that teacher is wrong, point it out. When that teacher is incorrect, point it out. Take notes. Record it. Privately address it with the teacher. Address it with the school counselor. Address it with the principal. Point out the fact that this teacher is indoctrinating our children with incorrect concepts and principles. Making facts up. And if it still doesn't work, then go to the school board with it and go with facts in hand and prove that teacher wrong in front of the school board. Ask that they either fix it or remove the problem. Use the Delphi technique against them instead of the other way around. We'll be back in just a minute.
The area's best selection of firearms and ammunition can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry. Top-of-the-line handguns from Kimber, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Glock, Beretta, and many more. A wide selection of ammunition, including blanks, centerfire handgun and rifle, rimfire, a variety of shotgun shells, target, and turkey. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms and ammunition can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
Hi, I'm Scott Corman, President of Community First. We want to be your bank. We believe in the strength of our communities, businesses, families, and future. We're not just locally owned, but community owned. And we operate today just as we started, by living up to our name, putting you and our communities first.
Living up to our name, community first, banking company.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
It's a call and make your voice heard on the biggest issues making headlines today, or on absolutely anything in your head. Every call I get goes on the air totally unscreened. It's unpredictable and uncensored, and you'll never know what to expect. Anything can and will happen on the next Alan Colmes Show.
And that's who you can catch every weeknight, 9 till midnight. The Alan Colmes Show on the Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point, Monday through Friday. Out of 365 days a year, we celebrate holidays, anniversaries, and other important days. But there is one day you look forward to, your birthday.
I wanna wish you a happy birthday.
Ryan's Steakhouse of West Plains is proud to bring you the Birthday Club weekday mornings with Cooper & Company. Our daily winner receives one buffet and a drink to Ryan's. Just call your birthdays in weekday mornings with Cooper & Company at 255-0427. Brought to you by Ryan's and the Ozarks Best News Talk.
And happy birthday to you. Cha-cha-cha.
You know, here's the absurdity of this. Just to show you, by the way, how the press uses the same Delphi technique on you, listen to a couple of sentences out of this story about how Obama slams Republicans for gun reform stunts. This is up on our Facebook page. Republican Senator Mike Lee said Monday 13 senators have now signed a letter objecting to Reid's legislation and are threatening to filibuster it. The president is now concentrating on background checks that would bar felons or the mentally ill from owning weapons, as intense negotiations take place on Capitol Hill. Well, hold on a second. There is already law in place that prevents and bars felons from owning a weapon and the mentally ill. When you fill out a white sheet of 4473 to buy a gun, it specifically asks you, are you a felon or have you ever been adjudicated as mentally ill? And if you answer yes to either of those questions, they will not sell you the gun. So how is it that you can throw that into this story, author, writer, columnist, whoever the hell you are? Because what they're saying here is they're trying to give you the impression and the unknowledgeable, right? These are the folks who live in the cities, and they have no idea. They don't own a gun. They've never actually handled one. They've definitely never shot one. The only ones they ever see are on TV. And so this gives these folks the impression that felons and the mentally ill are not already barred from owning a gun. That would be a lie. They are barred from owning a gun. It's already in the law. And by the way, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head because I've forgotten them. I have so many facts in my brain, I can't remember this particular one. But the number of prosecutions for those people who did try to fill out a 4473 to buy a gun, who were either a felon or a mentally ill, the number of prosecutions was like, I don't even know, it was like not even 1%. It was 1/2 of 1%. So if you've got 1,000 people who actually say, I'm going to try to fill out a 4473 with the intent to buy a gun, and they're declined because they are a felon or they're mentally ill, and they're denied that right. Why doesn't the federal government go after and prosecute those people? Because they sign right at the bottom under perjury of law, I swear I'm not a bad guy, and blah, 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 blah. The law exists. They just don't apply it. And I'll tell you why they don't apply it. They want you to have the impression that it doesn't exist. That's the simple damn truth of it. Then this guy goes on to say, the plan would exempt sales between close family members and some hunters in an attempt to undercut some Republican opposition. Now, let's stop right there. Some hunters? What does that mean? Guys who have a coyote rifle versus guys who have a squirrel gun. I mean, what the hell are we talking about? First of all, the Second Amendment isn't about hunting. Secondly, some hunters are not unequal from other hunters. All hunters are equal. You either hunt or you don't. Third, close family members defines what? My third cousin, seventh removed? What the hell does that mean? Well, we're going to leave it for the courts to figure out. Look, the whole thing is such a scam, and you are being so brainwashed by this Delphi technique, you don't even know when it's being used against you. Most people read that story and never even recognize that line, but make no mistake, your brain picked it up. You may not have acknowledged it, but your brain got it. I guarantee it. You may not recognize each of these sentences for what they are, but they are no different from the guy standing in front of you with a swinging watch saying, you are getting sleepy, very sleepy. If Nicole can summon the courage to do that, how can the rest of us do any less? The consensus is that Nicole is the paragon of virtue, held upon a pedestal for all to see, her strength, her courage, the courage of her conviction to demonize literally hundreds of millions of Americans because she went through a traumatic experience and is so fractured and scarred emotionally that she's not thinking clearly. She has no constitutional grounding. She has no training, and she's used as a pawn. By a corrupt and demonic facilitator of the Delphi Technique that has one and only one goal: to manipulate you into groupthink, to couch you as a loudmouth if you disagree, to couch you as unreasonable, and to praise those who are the consensus leader. Look, she's doing it. Why aren't the rest of you following suit? Look at her shining example. She lost a daughter. She's fighting. She's doing the right thing. She's putting all of her effort and energy and motivation and political capital into making sure that this never happens again to any other mommy. Listen, I grant you, what happened to that woman and that child are an absolute evil crime. But by passing gun legislation, you're not accomplishing the end result that you desire. The end result is to remove evil from humanity. And I'm here to tell you, it ain't gonna work. Humans are inherently evil when they are corrupted. Make no mistake about it. If you are a religious believer, go read your Bible. And if you're not a religious believer, go look at human history. I don't care where you find it. The simple truth is, give people an ounce of power, and they become tyrannical with it. Give people a mission, And they will put everything behind it without thinking of the consequence, unintended or otherwise. This woman is being manipulated and used as a pawn. So are all the other parents from Sandy, Hook, Newtown, whatever you want to call it. They're being used by a master manipulator, a devil in sheep's clothing, wandering among the sheep, patting them on the head, making them feel secure, making them feel important. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the good thing. While they're convincing all the other sheep around them to march to the slaughter. And when one or two sheep bleat out, "Hey, wait, something's wrong here," he turns around and snarls, and the mask comes off the face. And you see true evil. He belittles that sheep, castrates that sheep publicly. And if the sheep refuses to close his mouth, he's pushed out of the flock. Let me tell you something. This is not something new. This is not something unusual. This is something that has been used time and time and time again to build a workable consensus that is against your best interest. And if you make the mistake of thinking that every politician is not trained in its use, you're a fool. Do you think for 1 minute that Carney, when he comes out there and he stands in front of that podium in front of the press every day, is not extensively trained in the Delphi Technique? You're an idiot if you do. If you don't think this president has studied this whole principle and concept, he may not call it that. I don't know what he calls it. He calls it community organizing. I call it community Delphi Technique. And if you don't, it's because you don't know it when you see it. This thing was designed originally to get consensus from people who were far disparate in terms of their geographic distance. It was the idea of getting a whole group of scientists together and getting them to agree on cloning or getting them to agree on, some other issue. It's been used most recently in that same context to get scientists to agree that global warming is a problem. And yet all the evidence against global warming points to the opposite. Yet scientists who speak out against global warming are demonized. They're called quacks. And those who have been supporting it, have you noticed in the papers and in the news that they're caught lying constantly? They will lie to support their agenda. If you don't think this president considers lying as part of his acceptable process to get his consensus approved, you're smoking too much dope. Put down the joint, put down the bottle, put down the porno, put down the TV, and start waking up to the reality. You have fallen down the rabbit hole, and it's time that you got on your feet and began the long climb upward. This is America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning. I hope that you'll join me. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can find this particular story on our website at americasvoicenow.org, and you can find us on YouTube, including this show, at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Send it to some of your friends.
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is KBNV Birch Tree is the Ozarks best news talk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.